This is what I think these four NBA teams should do after their second round exits. First, we're going to start off with the Thunder versus the Nuggets. Now, this series went 7 games. It was one of the more entertaining series we've had in the playoffs so far. It was a battle of who's going to win MVP and who's going to be second in the MVP. I think SGA is going to win it. I don't know why it still hasn't been announced yet as I'm recording this episode, but I'm assuming SGA is going to win it. And Jokic is also having an historic season and would win it any other year. And they battled it out, and SGA ended up coming out victorious. But it wasn't just Jokic outplaying Shea. It was a collection of the whole team, and I've been stressing this for weeks on weeks that the NBA now is about team construction and it's about your roster. It's not just your best player is better than my best player, is who's going to win the series. It's all about your role players and can they get the job done just as much as your best player can. Because of this, I had the Thunder actually get into the NBA Finals because how deep their roster is and how well balanced their lineup is and their historic defense. And they made Jokic look normal and they were actually shutting Jokic down. I mean, he still had his games where I think he had a 40-point game in this and he averaged 28 points and 14 rebounds. But the big thing was he only had 6 assists and they completely shut down pretty much everybody else. But they also flustered Jokic and he was not shooting well from the field. And especially during that game 7, for some reason, Alex Caruso was locking up Jokic and having Jokic flop around everywhere and he just couldn't post up. He kept trying to just post up with his arm instead of putting his body in front of Caruso so he could deny Caruso the ball. I don't know why he was doing that, and that allowed Caruso to front him, meaning that they couldn't give an entry pass to Jokic. But that was just, in my opinion, one, it is on the other people for not being able to make the entry pass, but Jokic needs to be able to post up on Caruso, and he was just getting out physical. By 6'5" Caruso. If we're going to start comparing you to players like Kareem, Bill Russell, Wilt, Hakeem, Shaq, you can't be bodied like Caruso like that. That's just unacceptable, and that's the level of player that he is now. So that's who we have to compare him to. But he was not good in this series, in my opinion. Jamal Murray ended up getting sick. I don't know what exactly sickness he had. He ended up getting sick in that game 7. He was pretty pedestrian, just to say the least. Now, Michael Porter Jr., he literally couldn't lift up his shoulder throughout the entire series. But credit to him for playing, but he was a no-show because he couldn't lift his shoulder, like I just said. And then Aaron Gordon, he was honestly their best player for a lot of the games and bailed them out during this playoffs because Jokic was not spectacular by any means necessary. But Aaron Gordon during game 7, he had a grade 2 hamstring strain and somehow he played like 30 minutes. So shout out to you. He couldn't run, but he was still effective nonetheless. So shout out to you. Christian Brown, he needs to be able to knock down shots better, but he was very good in that game 7 when it goes to dropping the basket. But the Thunder's defensive game plan was to let Christian Brown's have as many shots as possible. Russell Westbrook was not very good in this series. The starters for the Nuggets somewhat actually outplayed the Thunder, but when the second unit came, they just had fresher legs, and the Nuggets 4 through 9 players were just terrible, and they don't have anybody else. And talking about what they need to do to the roster next season, with how the new cap situation is, they're going to have to move off from Michael Porter Jr. Now, I know he was hurt, but he's making $30 million a year, and he's not worth that at all. You may have to move Aaron Gordon, even though Aaron Gordon is a very good player. That is a lot of money, but I would more than likely, if you're going to move Aaron Gordon, you better get somebody good in return or 2 good role players in return. But you need a backup 5 man because as soon as Jokic leaves the game, I mean, it's just the instant impact in the Thunder. We're able to go on runs like crazy. So you need to get a backup 5 man, but you just need to get a better bench. I mean, Russell Westbrook, I don't think you want to be him because he's either going to be really, really good or he's just going to be really, really bad. So you probably not going to re-sign Russell Westbrook when it comes to that, but you're going to have to get better players than Strawford and Peyton Watson and players of that nature if you want to be able to compete because roster construction is at a premium now in the NBA. I assume that Aaron Gordon is probably going to stay. Michael Porter Jr. is definitely gone. Jamal Murray should stay, but he's got to play better. And their overall roster construction, they just got to be able to get people who can guard because in the playoffs, I give them credit. The Nuggets defense was a lot better than it was in the regular season, but it was still not up to par, like if we're talking about the Thunder, for example. So they need to get players who can guard, but can also knock in the 3 ball, and Jokic doesn't have to create absolutely every wide open look, or they cannot create anything for themselves. Who are those players? I don't really know who's a free agency. I don't know who's available, but that is what the Nuggets need to address in this offseason. But we'll talk about the Thunder. SGA was really good during the series, and Alex Caruso is absolutely amazing. But the Thunder are the same team they've been all year. They're going to lock you down on defense, and when they turn the ball over, they're going to instantly get fast break points, and that's how they start blowing you out, and maybe they'll do that against Minnesota. The next series was the Timberwolves versus the Warriors. Now, this was not a very good series, mainly because Stephen Curry ended up leaving game one with a hamstring strain, and without Stephen Curry, this Warriors team was very, very limited. Jimmy Butler is not the player he once was when he was in Miami, and he was carrying them to the Eastern Conference Finals and the NBA Finals, where he was averaging almost 30 to 40 points in the playoffs. He's not that player anymore. He really just gets like backside cuts, and that's really how he scores his points. Now he can't really create for himself anymore, beside trying to get to the free throw line and just bait you into fouling and pump faking and just trying to get to the free throw line as much as possible. That's really his game now. Kuminga actually played very well, and I don't understand how Steve Kerr goes from not playing Kuminga at all to playing Kuminga like 30 minutes when somebody gets hurt. I just don't understand that, in my opinion. Draymond Green was not that impactful when it comes to the defensive side like you actually want him to be, because Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert had a field day with him down low, but he is short and they are bigger and taller players, so you would expect that. But from somebody who was campaigning to be Defensive Player of the Year, I actually expected more when it comes to that. Pods was an absolute no-show throughout this series. Buddy Hield had a moment here and there, but he wasn't particularly great in this series. But the Warriors just really didn't have enough firepower, and they really rely on Steph to do absolutely everything for their offense, even when Steph doesn't have the ball with this off-ball movement, and then also just the attention that you have to give Stephen Curry, because how well he moves off the ball and how well he can shoot the ball just opens up everything for everybody else. And without that, really, they weren't a playoff team. Now, what direction should they go in? They have a lot of money in Stephen Curry and Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green right now. I'm assuming Kuminga is going to be gone. They're probably going to get a sign and trade with him, but his value is probably diminished because Steve Kerr refuses to play him when everybody's healthy. So I'm assuming that a team is not going to be willing to give up a whole lot for Kuminga, so you probably drop the ball on that one. But similar to what the Nuggets are, they just need more creators when it comes off the bench. You can't rely on old man Jimmy Butler and Stephen Curry to absolutely do everything on the offensive end. You got to get more creators. You got to get younger. You got to get more defenders when it comes to the perimeter. And you just got to get people who can put the ball in the hole. And overall, as a roster, you just got to get better from top to bottom. But it's going to be hard because of their cap situation right now. Now, the window is probably next year is probably the last year that the Warriors are going to be able to compete. So maybe they make a big old move. We'll see about that one. But then talk about the Timberwolves winning the series. I mean, Anthony Edwards was not great in this series by any means. Actually, he was probably their second best player. And their best player was Julius Randle. Julius Randle, who everybody was mocking the Timberwolves and said they lost the trade, giving up Karl Anthony Towns. And Julius Randle was not good during the NBA regular season. But during this postseason, Julius Randle has looked very good, and he's hitting his shots, and the ball's not stagnant when it comes to him. He's just not trying to do everything in isolation, and he's making decisions quick, and he's not turning the ball over at a horrible rate like he tends to do sometimes and what he did in the regular season. And the big issue with Julius Randle was he was a playoff dropper. Now in the playoffs, he's actually playing his best basketball that he's played maybe in his whole NBA career. So shout out to him for that. And then Rudy Gobert also played really good this series, and he was just a very good rim protector. And when they do give him the ball and he's not a absolute liability, and when he can just simply make a layup or just put back dunks, Rudy Gobert was actually very effective. But the Timberwolves are just a very deep roster, and having Naz Reid, DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, also Clark giving you a few minutes every now and then. Having that versatility off the bench and having that many players who can give you very good minutes and can defend at a high level and also shoot the three ball very well. That is why they're in the Western Conference Finals, and that is why they're probably going to give the Thunder a good run for their money. And also Anthony is a playoff riser, even though he's not playing particularly well in these playoffs. But I assume in the Thunder series, game one he was all right, but I assume that he's going to take off and be Anthony Edwards like we know he is. And the next series is the Cavs versus the Pacers. Now, the Cavs were devastated by injuries. I mean, Darius Garland, he missed 2 games, I believe. And then when he came back from his toe injury, he obviously wasn't the same. He didn't have the burst. And Darius Garland, he makes and pretty much makes that entire offense run. And without him, their offense looked very stagnant and became very Donovan Mitchell heavy. Now, Donovan Mitchell did have, I think, two 40-point games or something like that. He averaged 34 points this series. So he was actually really good, but nobody else could really do anything. I mean, in game 5, Max Strus, I mean, what did he go 0 for 9? Just the supporting cast around him just really didn't do anything. Evan Mobley also missed the game. He wasn't very impactful when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. Defense, he was all right. With the 5-out offense that the Pacers run, how they spread you out, Jared Allen became a liability and he really became unplayable for some parts of the series. And also DeAndre Hunter missing a game also hurt them. And they just didn't shoot the 3 ball very well, and they were just ravaged by injuries, but not to take anything away from the Pacers at all because the Pacers are a great team. Now, what should the Cavs do to improve? I wouldn't make a drastic move because I think you would have won this series or at least made this series a lot more of a contest if you were fully healthy. I mean, you won 60 games for a reason, and you were very good during the regular season when you were healthy, so I wouldn't make two big moves. I mean, I know they are over the cap, so like Isaac Okoro, you're probably going to have to get rid of him or something like that. Ty Jerome is probably gone. Now, he's played very good, and during this playoff series, he was actually a liability. But he's played very good, and you're probably going to lose him because somebody's going to pay him a pretty penny because of the season he just had. So he's probably, and you are paying a lot of money to DeAndre Hunter, so I could see DeAndre Hunter getting moved. If they are going to make a big move, I assume they're going to move Evan Mobley to the 5, and they're going to get rid of Jared Allen for something. But mainly, they need some type of wing defense because Max Strus being your wing defender is just not very well, and the wings of Andrew Nembhard or Nesmith absolutely killed them throughout this series. But I wouldn't make some sudden move or anything like that. I think some people are making an overreaction. If they were healthy, I think this would have been a very competitive series, and I actually think Cleveland would have won because I do think a healthy Darius Garland is that important. But I think you do need to strengthen the back half of your roster. And then talking about the Pacers, I mean, Tyrese Halliburton has been phenomenal this series. Now, you can't just look at the box score when it comes to Tyrese Halliburton because what he averaged 17 and 7 assists. That's not eye-catching numbers, but if you actually watch the games, when you talk about game winners or clutch time situations or just controlling the pace of the game or setting up teammates in the right way, Tyrese Halliburton is doing absolutely everything, and he's showing everybody that he's not the most overrated player in the NBA. Their rotation consists of like 9 players, almost 10 players some nights, and Nembhard played absolutely great during this series. Nesmith, he gives you so much effort on the offensive side and the defensive side. He's really just an energy guy. Pascal Siakam does what Pascal Siakam does. He was very good in this series. And Miles Turner had a very good series. And hopefully the Pacers can find a way to keep him because he's had a very good season. TJ McConnell off the bench, very good. Obi Toppin finally healthy. Just players of that, like the roster construction around them is just very good. And they are going to get expensive quick, so the Pacers do need to capitalize on this. They've been in the conference finals 2 years in a row. Now, to be fair, injuries are a big part of that. The Cleveland Cavaliers just got hurt the round before that. Dame was obviously hurt. And then if you're going back to last year, there was a lot of injuries going through that. So a lot of people are going to say the Pacers don't belong here, but I do think the Pacers belong. I mean, they're a very good team, and they could have very well beat the Cleveland Cavaliers if they were at full strength. The last series we have is the Celtics versus the Knicks. First off, prayers up to Jason Tatum. I know he's had surgery. I don't know if the surgery went well or not, but he has a torn Achilles, so prayers up to Tatum. He gets a lot of hate from some people, and including myself sometimes when he's just not aggressive or he's taking really bad shots. But he's a top 6, top 5 NBA player for a reason. And if I'm Jason Tatum, I'm not playing at all next season. I know the person who did the surgery did Kevin Durant's surgery, and Kevin Durant missed, 16 to 17 months. I think that's exactly what Jason Tatum should do. Even if you can come back for the playoffs, don't risk it. Get your body 100% ready and just be ready for not next year, but the next year coming after that. I mean, this is a career-ending injury. Even with modern medicine, the players still do not come back the same from these types of injuries. So you just need to be careful. And like I said, I don't think he should play at all next season. But if you look at the regular season, how these matchups were, I mean, the Celtics were absolutely smoking. So I thought this series would be a complete blowout. But the Knicks were going to win the series regardless, even if Jason Tatum doesn't go out in game 4. And this is what happens when you play this brand of basketball that the Celtics play. And they got absolutely cold at the absolute wrong moment, and they were just missing all their threes. And Joe Mazzulla refuses to make adjustments when it comes to stop shooting the 3-ball and go to the rack and get to the free throw line and get a better shot. It came back to bite them in the butt. Jaylen Brown, from what I hear, has a torn meniscus, and he's probably going to have surgery on that, so he's going to miss a good bit of time for next season as well. but that's still not an excuse. And Kristaps Porzingis, I mean, some people have said he has the Magic Johnson disease. If you know, you know. Towards the second half of the season and in this playoff run, he has not looked like himself at all. And he's breathing hard after like 2 minutes when he's on the court. So I don't know what's wrong with him. But he's the X factor, and he's been their second best player throughout most of the season. And Derek White and Drew Holiday were just not enough. But the Celtics, this was going to be their last run when it comes to this roster and this starting five, because the cap is going to absolutely bite them in the butt. And I mean, the owner sold the team because of the cap situation, how much money they're paying into the second apron, and how much they are over the cap. So this roster is not going to look the same next year. I assume that Drew Holiday is probably going to get moved. I assume that Kristaps Porzingis is probably going to get moved. What can you get for those two players? I mean, Drew Holiday is old and he had a down year this season, and Kristaps Porzingis is very injury prone. So who knows what you're going to be able to get for him. Jaylen Brown is making the most money in the NBA, which who knows, they could try to move on for him because he's not worth that amount of money, not worth to be the best player in the NBA. But he is still a very good player, and he's a top 40, top 30 player in the NBA. Not for that money, so maybe they move on for him and they try to get somebody else who make a little bit less money, so then they work on their roster construction and how deep the roster is. They're going to keep Derek White at all costs, in my opinion, and I don't think Jason Tatum's obviously going anywhere. Jaylen Brown, he could go somewhere, but I do think they're going to keep him. But I do expect Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis to be moved in the offseason just because of how the cap situation is right now. And then talking about the Knicks, I mean, shout out to them. They did not have a very good regular season when it comes to beating the big teams like the Cavs or the Celtics. I mean, actually getting blown out by the Celtics in multiple games during this regular season. But they've had multiple 20-point comebacks during this series, and they just weathered the storm with the Boston Celtics. And when the Celtics started to miss threes in the fourth quarter and were reluctant just to drive for the basket, they capitalized on that. Jalen Brunson is the clutch player of the year for a reason. He's playing his best ball at the right time, and he's playing really good. Karl-Anthony Towns finally decided to show up at moments during the series. And although they both are defensive liabilities, it wasn't a factor really much in this series. But the real X factor was Mikal Bridges in the mid-range was phenomenal, and he's finally actually playing up to par and holding up to his end of the bargain when they traded that many first-round picks for him. And his defense has vastly improved during these playoffs. Giannobi on the defensive side of the ball, that wing duo, them two, has been very good. And then Josh Hart just being the dirty work guy, getting rebounds, and just doing what needs to be done to win a basketball game. That's what Josh Hart's going to do. Now, the only thing that does concern me about the Knicks, and this is what a big concern I've had for a long time with Tom Thibodeau, I mean, he plays his starters to the ground. I mean, the Celtics were down by like 40, and with like 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter, Tom Thibodeau subs OG Anunoby back in. Why are your starters even in? I don't understand that, and I do think during a team like the Pacers, who are going to push the pace and run, that could be an issue. They only play about 7 guys with like Deuce McBride and Mitchell Robinson and sometimes Cameron Payne, but sometimes he doesn't even play at all. But that's just how Tom Thibodeau plays, and that's the type of system that the Knicks run. Maybe it doesn't come to bite them in the butt, but they've been a very clutch team, especially Jalen Brunson. He's been taking over games in the fourth quarter completely, even though he is flopping and trying to get foul calls. But SGA does the same thing. That gets on my nerves. But I did not expect the Knicks to be close in this series at all. Then game one for the Pacers and Knicks is tonight. I'm very interested to see how the dynamic between the Pacers playing with that amount of pace and the Knicks not playing with a lot of people, and how the Pacers can spread you out and they have 5 people who can actually handle the ball and make plays. And it's going to put a lot of stress on Karl-Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson, who are defensive liabilities. And then also when Mitchell Robinson comes, because he was very impactful in most of the minutes that he came in, is he going to be able to keep up with the pace and all that type of stuff in their 5-out offense? So we'll see on that one. But that's all I have for this episode. Thank you guys for watching. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment in the comment section below. And I'll see y'all next week, and bye.